Welcome to Jewish History Matters. I'm your host, Jason Lustig, and I'm pleased to welcome you and to tell you about our new and exciting podcast. I hope you'll subscribe at iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, and you can keep track of us and the latest updates on Twitter at Jewish History FM. Today I want to talk about why Jewish history matters, why we're creating this podcast, and what you'll discover here. Jewish history is a world history, spanning 3,000 years and nearly every continent and country. It's the tale of a diverse people that have survived and thrived no matter where they ended up, a story of globalization long before the advent of the modern world. And it's a history of minorities that illustrates both persecution and perseverance. In the end, Jewish history is more than the history of the Jews themselves. It's the history of the world in which they've lived, of the ideas they've generated, of the cultures and religions which have existed in a constant pull of interaction, hybridity, and borrowing. This podcast is dedicated to exploring why this history is important and how the newest research and enduring issues of Jewish studies have something to offer to our understanding of the world at large. It presents an argument that in order to understand history and the human experience broadly speaking, we need to understand the Jews. Looking to American history, European history, histories of colonialism, science, or philosophy, let alone other topics, we can't overlook the Jews. They present both people who've played a part in all of these histories, as well as an important example of the place of minorities in these societies and environments. To disregard the Jews would be to neglect the nuances and complexities of history. At a time when, unfortunately, xenophobia has been raising its ugly head, and questions abound about refugees and religious minorities in the public discourse, Jewish history matters. It's crucial for comprehending how we got to where we are today on a range of important issues and policy debates. And it's not just the seemingly interminable Israeli-Palestinian conflict. When we see so many people being taken in by propaganda and misinformation, the Jews' own encounter with discourses of so-called fake news, like the absurd and false claims of blood libels, or the protocols of the Elders of Zion, unfortunately, we see how Jewish history has a continued relevance for the 21st century on this just as much as any number of other issues. And today, when the humanities and social sciences are being pressured to demonstrate their usefulness, this podcast stands on the principle that Jewish history still matters. And we should remind ourselves that Jewish history was once eminently practical. For Jews who debated issues like nationalism and religious reform, and non-Jews who tried to make sense of this odd people and tried to productivize them as part of a program of enlightenment and state building, not to mention those whose aim was to missionize to the Jews, Jewish history became a bedrock of policy and action. And this is by no means a call for a return to ideologically and politically driven histories. Instead, it's a reminder that the study of the Jews has always had wider implications, and it still does. The Jews and their history matter because we find in them an important case study. Through the Jews, we can understand what's constant and what's different about the vast and varied societies in which Jews have lived. But beyond this, the Jews are not just a curiosity. In fact, we believe they illuminate much more about human history. The experience of the Jews and their endeavors in intellectual, cultural, social, and economic spheres, to mention just a few, have something important to teach us about the nature of the human experience. We created Jewish History Matters because the new research in Jewish studies is important but doesn't always get the attention it deserves. And so we'll be having a series of wide-ranging and exciting conversations with leading scholars about topics in all periods and fields of Jewish history: religion, politics, culture and literature, as well as current issues. It's an opportunity to keep a finger on the pulse of what's new in the field of Jewish research, and also to see what it has to contribute to a broader conversation. In this podcast, we'll be exploring how and why this history matters, and what we can learn from it in broad terms. Jewish History Matters is produced with the support of the Alan D. Levy Center for Jewish Studies at UCLA. And thanks to you for listening in too. We hope you subscribe to the podcast and join us for future episodes and interviews, which we should be posting about twice a month.